What's up, everybody? It's your favorite finalist, favorite nerd, and today we are going to do something different than we've done in previous years. In previous years, we've always done a one final, overall list, combining transforming and non-transforming to have a look at what's the best and worst figure. Let me just spoil that for you. The best figure is that Heat Toys Mechanical Leonardo, or whatever that thing was, like the robotic Ninja Turtle, and the worst thing is that Dreamstar Silver Bolt. So let's just get that out of here. I figured we'd do something different this year. With the amount of toys that I'm reviewing that don't belong to me, I thought it might be worthwhile to just take a look at my purchases for the year, overall, Transformers, non-Transformers, etc., and just tell you how I break down my own purchases for the year. Some of this obviously will be repetitive because some of the things in the previous videos I did by myself, but some of them I didn't. So I think this might be more interesting than what we've done in the past. Time to spice it up a bit. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll get started with most disappointing figures of the year. Just to recap, that doesn't mean that they're bad figures necessarily. It just means that they were disappointments. If a company released perfect figures and then released one that was slightly less perfect, that's a disappointing release. So let's go ahead and have a look at these. And coming in at number 5 is Hot Toys Cyborg. Now, the reason why this is disappointing is because Hot Toys does a tremendous job on their sculpts and their plastics, which is all this guy is. There's no soft goods here. Now, they do a good job with soft goods as well, but sometimes the soft goods can detract from the overall effectiveness of the figure. But it's rarely the case with their Iron Mans, their Iron Patriots, stuff like that. So I was expecting this to be on that level. It's not. It is extremely limited. It took forever to come out, and you would have expected more. You would have expected it to be on the level of Iron Man, and you would have expected the extra oomph from the amount of time it took to release it, and I got neither, making it a disappointment. Still love it on my shelf, but it is a disappointing release for me. Coming in at number 4 are the G.I. Joe Classified Dreadnoks. Now, these aren't terrible figures, but being as though the line is so bloody good, it was disappointing to get these two with these goofy-ass goggles that take away from the whole visual appearance and shelf presence as a whole. Just a really silly oversight that would have made their job, in my opinion, even easier by not having to paint the eyes. Now, if they wanted to leave you one without the glasses, I think that's fine too. In fact, I would have appreciated it. But package in an extra head that I don't have to worry about sitting the glasses on. In fact, this one is better than the other one, but you can still see here it doesn't quite sit on the eyes right. But I was afraid to get the other one out because I was afraid the glasses might fall off at some point and I would lose them because they're just that baggy on his head. Huge disappointment. Coming in at number 3, Mafex Birds of Prey Harley Quinn. A disappointing figure from a disappointing movie. So I guess it all makes sense. And it's really the arm sleeves that did it. And it's not that this figure's terrible. It's really not. They really made a valiant effort and attempt to get it right. It's just that they've been operating at such a high frequency that when they put something out like this, it really becomes obvious at just how the mighty have fallen when they fall. Which, for them, has been rare. But you just lose so much playability and posing options when you have these big sleeves. They probably should have been done in soft goods. It just is a really limiting figure from a company that's been producing really engaging figures recently. So, kind of a bummer. Number 2, Fans Toys Blaster. Now, I don't have him here because I sold him, but I did purchase him, so I feel like he still counts. It's not that he's a bad figure, it's just a disappointing release for me. It's kind of the epitome of this kind of soulless, lifeless direction I feel like that company's been taking over the last couple years. I totally get why people like it, I totally understand. But I've always liked Fans Toys' takes on characters. I'm not interested in Fans Toys making a copy of an imitation. I prefer their own approach. But we're seeing less and less of Fans Toys actually represented in Fans Toys these days, and more of Fans Toys trying to trace the lines of somebody else. But perhaps never more a more soulless attempt than this one, in my opinion. Add on top of that the red paint that doesn't pop, the gray paint that doesn't pop, and it just feels like a very lackluster release from a company that I expect an awful lot out of. Numero uno, Loose Collector. Now, this is the Red Sonja figure. You could pick between this or the Vampirella, which are the two that I bought, but they're both disappointing for the same reasons, and it's not that they're bad. They are as good as a Marvel Legend. They are as good as a Mattel figure. They are as good as a Black Series figure. They are as good as a mediocre G.I. Joe figure, but they are 3 times the price. And with 3 times the price, it puts them close to the Mafex arena, so I was expecting something perhaps a bit more in between. But what I got was something much closer to a Marvel Legend at 3 times the price. Now, I don't blame them for that price. I think that that's probably the price they have to put it at to keep the lights on. It was just disappointing with the price versus quality. Quality's fine, price is a bit much. And there they are, my most disappointing figures of the year. And to be fair, and even if you included the blaster in here, if these are the most disappointing figures of the year, it's a pretty good year. They're pretty good figures. It's just that the companies are normally known to operate at a higher frequency, or the price suggested that I should expect a bit more perhaps. But I didn't buy a whole lot of junk this year. In fact, that's been trending down in many ways over the years. But there still has to be some that are disappointing and some that are surprisingly good. So let's go ahead and move on to the surprisingly good. Moving on to surprisingly good, Super 7. Man, do I have a complicated relationship with this company. They often leave me feeling like a huge waste of money was spent. But this one was actually surprisingly good. This one and the other one that came out at the same time, the cowboy dude. The articulation remained the same, but all the paint was done super clean and even had kind of soft fading paint that was done sort of subtly with maybe an airbrush, perhaps a light wash on the muscle tones. And the eyes and everything were painted and sculpted, which is nice for them, which was a breath of fresh air. So I really did appreciate those initial releases, and it left me very optimistic for the line, at least when I dealt with these releases. But we'll get to that later. At any rate, number 5 on my most surprisingly good. Number 4, Super 7's Notorious B.I.G. figure. Look, I'm going to be honest. Anytime that Super 7 makes a figure that doesn't suck, I'm going to be pleasantly surprised. But I'm even more surprised with this one because it's coming off of the back of ODB, which had a ton of issues, as well as a head sculpt that was kind of like, I guess you got close enough. This one, they kind of nailed it. The accessories made a lot of sense. They were fun. They were integratable. It was very, very cool and paid tribute to a huge icon. No pun intended. And aside from his shape up in the back, a pretty extraordinary figure for what it is. Number 3, and I don't think I could say it any better than I already have, but I was around for the Combiner Wars version of this character, and it's one of the worst things I've ever interacted with. For them to have come so far in the past couple years and offer this, which is a pretty solid effort. Perfect? Of course not. But in comparison to what my expectations have presented through time, super solid effort, surprisingly so, which is why he made the list at number 3. Number 2, Jada Toys Fei Long. Once again, I don't think I can say this any better than I did before, but a relatively new company at a very affordable price point, a competitive price point that made a figure that's just as good as its major corporative competitors. That to me is very impressive. Surprisingly so, you might say. And I couldn't be happier because I still need a fair amount of this line fleshed out, and it looks like they're going to help. A friend in need is a friend indeed, but a friend with Fei Long is better. Really a solid offering. And numero uno, Baby Sinclair from NECA. They nailed the sculpt, they nailed the paint, but I kind of expect that from them. What I didn't expect was for this figure to bring back memories of me and my father watching this as a kid, him laughing, me laughing with him, not understanding all the jokes all the time. It's common for me to get a toy and like it. It's common for me to get a toy and love it. It's common for me to get a toy and be impressed by it. It's common for me to get a toy, hate it, be disappointed by it. What's uncommon is that a toy really makes me feel something. And this did. And I didn't see it coming from 10 miles away. I would have never predicted it. A mile away, I would have never predicted it. But this figure made me happy in a way that I wasn't expecting. A surprising way, you might say. And there are my surprisingly good figures of the year. It was such a crazy bunch. But to be fair, I have to recognize that there are 2 from Super 7 on there. It'll help keep me balanced a little bit, actually momentarily in this list we're working on here. But yeah, each one of these figures took me by surprise. And that's not to say that any of them are great, that any of them are amazing. No, it's just to say that my expectations were far lower than what they delivered. And bravo to them for that. Moving on to worst figures of the year, and like I mentioned previously, there's just too much wrong here. The head sculpt is wrong, the jean shorts look weird, like I appreciate what they were trying to do with the color, but the actual sculpting of the jean shorts is weird, and then it kind of has all the Super 7 limitations after that. So like, the thing that BI did right was it got the face right, and that's helped sell all of it. The fact that this guy doesn't do those things, and then on top of that has the same typical Super 7 issues, adds to just a conglomerate of nothing. Everything is low except the price point, and as a result, it makes my list at number 5 worst figure of the year. Number 4, Fans Toys Power Glide. The paint doesn't pop, the articulation is limited, the knees suck, the feet are weird, the transformation is a nightmare. It just fails, in my opinion. It's definitely one of the worst figures they've ever made. Certainly the worst one they put out this year, but it also happened to be one of the worst ones I bought this year. But not in the top 3, which is still a good sign, because Fans Toys still delivers on materials and stuff like that, and it is painted, which is nice. It just doesn't get the job done. It just falls short of being effective as an action figure. And that needs to come first, in my opinion. Unfortunately, the later two offerings from Super 7 in regard to their Silverhawks did not effectively get the job done in the same way the first two did, and instead fall back upon themselves in the old tropes that Super 7 is famous for and delivered a poorly articulated, decently sculpted, touch-and-go painted representation of a character that nobody else is doing, which is how they get by. This felt like business as usual, whereas the first two releases felt like something special. And business as usual for Super 7 is not good. But you know what's worse? When business as usual isn't as usual, it's subpar than usual when dealing with Super 7, which brings us to our number 2. The Big Bad Wolf from Super 7. Weird Y-hinged, universal disc-hinged hips, feet that have a hard time balancing, limited articulation, and a joint that was seized at the neck that popped the ball peg off at the first attempt at really trying to move the head. Unacceptable. Once again, all standards are low except for the price. They didn't cut any corners there. Just not worth it. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Terrible release from a terrible company in my opinion. Am I a sucker for continuing to buy them? Yes. It's just nobody else is presenting an option. I bought a lot of Super 7 stuff this year, but next year won't be the same. I promise you that. But like I had stated in a previous video, I broke the head off that Big Bad Wolf, so I have to take accountability for that. I have to be responsible for that, which is why the Big Bad Wolf wouldn't have made my list at number 1. Had I not broken the head off of it, it might have. But this one I didn't break anything on. This one's just bad. This is the Fugitoid from NECA from their TMNT comic book line. The sculpt is good, the paint is good, and everything else about it sucks. Articulation sucks. Accessories suck. Everything sucks. It just doesn't do anything but pretty much what you see here, making it my worst figure of the year. In my opinion, for my purchases. And there they are, the Island of Misfit Toys for 2023. An awful lot of wasted money here, in my opinion. Just not the best lot of figures that the world has to offer. And what's funny is a lot of these companies ended up making some figures that I really liked. I like a lot of the stuff NECA put out this year. I like a lot of the stuff Super 7 put out this year. And of course, Fans Toys put out some winners, specifically that Gears this year. But this batch here, this ain't it. Moving on to best figures of the year, coming in at number 5 is a G.I. Joe Classified offering. G.I. Joe Classified has had a really good year of really solid offerings, just not a whole lot of amazing figures, just really good, like above average, well done figures, but nothing that really blew my socks off. But this one kind of did. Shipwreck's a difficult character to kind of make look modern and not look completely goofy, and I think they did a decent job here. Brought him up to date, gave him all the kind of iconic looks that signify who the character is while making him seem not entirely goofy, and what goofiness does comes through in a very charming and endearing way. So yeah, this is number 5 for me, best figures of the year. Number 4, Mafex Hush Nightwing. Not my favorite release from them this year, and not their best release in my opinion, but I can't deny that they really did hone the character in. And when I have him on my shelf, he often catches my eye. I'm not sure if it's the sharp contrast in colors, or that so much character really comes through. Smart accessories, all the above, good joints, good build, good sculpt, like just a paint by numbers of how to make a good figure. Number 4. Number 3, Eject and Rewind from MMC. I just pulling them both because it's the same mold. Good sculpt, good build, good materials, great articulation, fun transformation, cool looking alt mode, long awaited and really didn't disappoint. Starting to show its age a bit because they're such old designs, but still really solid offerings that I've been waiting an awful long time for, so a very fulfilling purchase, which brings them in at number 3. Number 2, Fans Toys Gears. I think it's clearly their best release this year. It's not my favorite release of theirs of all time, but it's one of the best purchases I've made this year. They kind of get what needs to get right. And along with that comes some kind of interesting stuff visually along the way. What more could you ask for? Materials, build, sculpt, paint, appropriate accessories, articulation. The articulation is actually above average for what Fans Toys usually does. So yeah, a well done figure and deserving of its spot. Number 2. Numero uno, Cyborg Superman from Mafex. I got this figure early on in the year, and I had a pretty good feeling that it was probably going to be my figure of the year, and I was right. I'm not crazy about this character. I'm not really connected to a lot of that stuff that went on with the Return of Superman in that way. It's not biased on my end. It's just a really well done figure. From the sculpt to the paint to the accessories to the cape to the presence to the playability, posability, shelf appeal. Like, it just all really works. A really well done figure. Maybe Mafex's best figure in my opinion of all time. A really solid effort. Kudos to them. And there they are, my figures of the year. And I'm really happy to see some Transformers on there because I haven't really bought a whole lot of Transformers this year. So it's nice to see that 2 still made the list, 2 third-party offerings still made the list of like best purchases of the year. Makes my heart warm. Some say Bobby's heart grew 10 sizes that day. I know everybody's over the holidays, I get it. But yeah, let's take a look at all of them real quick. And there you have it. The good, the bad, and the ugly of this year, 2023. Of my personal purchases. Not a terrible lot. And a lot of boxes checked, which is always nice. It's been an interesting year for me, but it's been a good one. I want to thank everybody that likes, comments, subscribes, all that kind of stuff throughout the year. I do appreciate you guys. I want to give a special shout out to all the Patreon supporters. Like, you guys have changed my entire approach to this stuff. You have made me, once again, happy to make content. You guys have made me want to approach content in a more meaningful way. I'm doing podcasts and stuff of things I never thought I'd address or touch on in a million years, and it's to you guys that I owe that, and I want to make sure that you know how appreciative I am. You have breathed life back into my passion regarding this stuff, not only in terms of consuming, but creating. Thank you. And to everybody else, Happy New Year. And as always, thanks for listening, thanks for watching. Until next time, take care. See you with the review after the first.